let's talk about the ratings for the national championship. Let's talk about the viewership for the bowl games, which is actually up this year. Kind of the schedule of the playoffs, what needs to be fixed, how it needs to be fixed, what needs to be tweaked. Mitch, give us some ideas on how to fix this thing.
First and foremost, we got to move the season up, right? I think that's the clearest situation. The fact I think we both put out a tweet basically at the exact same time, reacting to the January 25th announcement for 2027. So the
Yeah.
championship of the 2026 season will be in Vegas January 25th. That is asinine to
Yeah.
me. Even as a diehard who can find any reason to root for 100+ teams on any given Saturday, guys, I was burned out by the time we got to the national championship. I mean, the content grind had worn me out. And to think we have to go another week still coming up, it makes me cringe a little bit. And, I know, you guys probably felt this a little bit too. Like, there was a time that if I didn't have to get on and record a live show following the national championship game, I might have been tempted to turn it off at the half, right? When Ohio State just looked like they were blowing
Yeah.
Notre Dame out, there was definitely a part of me that thought, "Oh my gosh, just let it be over." And so I think the common suggestion is just move the season up. This is supposed to be a fall semester sport with college athletes who still have to go to class. We've got a portal window that's now going to be restricted down to 10 days. Let's see if we can get everything in before the portal window, in around New Year's Day, when excitement for a national championship game and tradition will still be at an all-time high. It feels like the season will crescendo at that time, as opposed to knocking on the door of spring training and forcing us all to wait till January 25th before we get to end this thing.
Yeah, that season looks like it would have been, just looking at the calendar, it would have been a prime spot to maybe think about moving it up a couple weeks, because Labor Day is on September 7th that day, that week, that year. So, and they're very obsessed with starting their, season week 1 on Labor Day. So it will start technically 5 days later on September 5th than it did this year, August 31st, which is why, the calendar switch and everything. But I'm with you. Move the season up. I know you'll get a little more, I went to that A&M game down in week 1, and it was hot. It was hot at 7:30 or 6:30 Central at night. You get games down like that day, they were playing in Gainesville, in Miami and Florida, and it was hot. So you're going to get some of that if you move it up, a little sooner into August. But I think the payoff is worth it. And so I think that would be step 1. Step 2, kind of on the rating side of it, you got to move the championship game from a Monday night.
Yep.
Because listen, we're going to watch the game regardless. Casuals, for the most part, may watch the game. I think some of the casuals' disinterest in college football playoff, all that, probably has something to do with NIL. I've talked to the people that I work with, and they say just the NIL situation and the fact that you don't have, a guy who, commits to your school and he's there for 3 or 4 years. You could basically just buy your team. You can hire, mercenaries to come and win games for you for 1 year, and then they transfer somewhere else. It's taken some of the interest out from just like the common fan. To me, that still doesn't explain such a drastic 100 million person gap difference from the Super Bowl getting 120 million people to watch on a Sunday night versus 22 million people watching two of the biggest brands in college football, Ohio State and Notre Dame. I just think, there's got to be something else said for that gap there. What do you think it is, Lance?
Well, I definitely think it's obviously this past year. I mean, it being in 2 months after the regular season ends that's ridiculous. Like, the game is 2 months after the regular season ends. There's so many fans of college football that are kind of like almost checked out because all their team's not in this 12-team playoff. Or so you might lose some of those fans, but 2 months later, I mean, come on. And the other part of this, I agree with Mitch 1,000%. And Tyler and I, we've talked about it too. Moving the season up a little bit into August, but we hear a lot of talk about this. I'm just curious what y'all's thoughts are. Are they getting rid of conference championship games? Is that coming?
It seems like they would be more willing to sacrifice a conference championship game, which, let's be honest, does not mean what it used to.
Yep.
Especially with the expanded field, right? There might be more cons now to playing in a conference championship game and potentially risking sliding out of the field than winning a conference championship anyway. Ohio State didn't even have to play in a conference championship game. They got healthy and they got to go on a national championship run. So I do think that's probably the first thing that gets cut from a traditionalist's standpoint. That's going to hurt. I love conference championship week. I enjoy watching it, but it feels like that's probably what they're going to chop rather than go earlier in the season.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I think that's probably coming. Everybody's talking about that. They think that that's possibly coming. That's also kind of one of the reasons why that when I saw the date for that, whatever, January 25th of 2027, that's the first year that this new contract, the contract they've got right now, that it'll expire, and that'll be the new year of the new playoff. And there are rumors of 14 teams. There's rumors of 16 teams. There's rumors of the no more conference championship game, but having the third and fourth or whatever teams from each conference play each other to try to see who gets into the playoff, like things like that going on. So that could be the reason why it's pushed back even further. But let's just be real. New Year's Day is and always has been college football's day. And I don't know how you move the calendar enough to get the national championship game on New Year's Day, but worst case scenario, they could easily have the semifinals.
Mm-hmm.
They could have the semis on New Year's Day, and then the following week or 10 days later, however they want to do it, have the national championship. They could do that. There's actually not a ton that needs to happen for them to accomplish that. Like moving the regular season up like a week or two or something is really all they would need to do. This past year, we had 2 bye weeks and stuff in the regular season. So that is absolutely doable. It's one of those deals, I think Tyler said this, a couple of weeks ago, is that maybe they need to fall flat on their face. Maybe it needs to get worse. Maybe it needs to get much worse before they actually do something about it in regards to that. Because me personally, I don't really care about ratings. I'm going to watch it anyway. But I agree with you, man. That couple of days before that national championship game, we were kind of the same way. I mean, Tyler's squad was in the national championship, so it's obviously different for him. But for me, even for me, just a diehard, eat, breathe, and sleep college football fan, even I was like, dude, can we freaking get this game? Can we play this game already? Good. Yeah.
They just last year they just had the semis on New Year's Day, so it's definitely doable. I know they added some extra teams, but I hesitate to even bring this up, but there's been a lot of talk. It feels heresy even thinking about it, but there's been a lot of talk about the Army-Navy game and what should be done with the Army-Navy game. And on one side you have, let's put Army-Navy week 0. It'll still have its, standalone game. You can play it wherever you want. It'll get all the eyeballs on it. On the other side, you got that it's America's game. It's more important than football. You got to play it still in a standalone at the end of the season. But there could have been a situation this year where Army gets into the playoff and they're announced in the playoff, and then they go lose the Navy afterwards. Like, you got to play it, I think, at least before the college football playoff is revealed in some cases. So Mitch, what do you think we do with that game, if anything?
Yeah, that's a true rock and a hard place. Listen, I consider myself a patriot. I, fight back tears at a good old sporting event when Old Glory's unveiled, and we sing the national anthem for sure. But I don't know that it's somehow disrespectful to the troops and to the families and the country if we don't have that game in December. I feel like it could be moved to the beginning of the year if you want it to be a standalone game, which I think it should be. Sure, that's great, but let's get it to a place where it fits naturally. Especially, Tyler, as you mentioned, especially if all of a sudden Army and Navy are going to be playing with postseason implications on the line, right? Like, we're to say that no, it has to stay there. You're honestly holding Army and Navy back from potentially doing something that we would remember for the rest of college football history. And we got dangerously close to doing it this year. So, whether Army and Navy could ever reach the college football playoff game to me is irrelevant. I think the very possibility of having those teams and those athletes, those student athletes, put in that position, for me, it kind of tips the scale to, let's find another day for them to play on a standalone event. Everybody can watch the Army Navy game and be just fine, but let's at least do something that makes sense for the student athletes.
Yeah.
If they played that bad boy on week 0, whatever we want to call it, like to kick off the college football season with the troops, yeah. I mean, the standalone game to kick off college football every single year with Army and Navy, I think that would be fantastic.
I'd be a puddle.
Yes, yeah, it'd seriously be incredible, and I couldn't wait to have the betting apps open to start.
Yeah, I think another thing too would be just one last thing to kind of talk on the the ratings and stuff. I think it would be wise of the NFL to come alongside college football. They have no reason to. All right, they're the NFL, they're the king. Doesn't matter to them if anybody else makes money or has success. They're having plenty of it, right? But they're the only league of the major sports leagues that pays $0 for their minor league. And I just think coming alongside college football, assisting them in a way to get more eyeballs on their sport, more eyeballs on the future players of the NFL. And to me, kind of when Lance was talking about putting the semis on New Year's Day, that's fine. And then, it runs into an issue where New Year's Day falls on whatever day. It falls on a Wednesday sometimes, right? So it kind of puts a trick into the schedule. But if New Year's Day comes on a Wednesday and then 10 days later on a Saturday, you've got wild card weekend starting up in the NFL. And on that Saturday afternoon, instead of 4:30 and 8 for the wild card games, you bump them up to 1 and 4:30, leading right into the national championship of college football Saturday night, 7:30, 8 o'clock, whatever you want to make it. I think that, and obviously we don't even need to get an ESPN, but simulcasting on ABC would help a ton. I just think that lockstep right there with the national championship sandwiched in between 3 more games on Sunday and then a Monday night wildcard game, that would be an incredible weekend.
I just think they need to let us do this. Like let us make the schedules here. Like this sounds great. I'm all for it.
It does feel like a missed opportunity, right? I agree with you there. So yeah, let me know where to submit a job application and let's ride.
Okay, we got this figured out.